Welcome, everybody, to the X Factor podcast, episode number,
37.
John, 37-ish?
37.
37, right?
Mhm.
37. Episode 37.
And episode 37, much like episode 36, was a listener-issued challenge, wasn't it?
It was, and I love these. These are the best.
Or did I come up with this?
Oh,
I think
don't
I
know.
came up with this one.
Oh, okay. Well, I like it
I
anyway.
texted this idea to you. That's what it was.
Okay, but I do like the listener-initiated one challenges because those are my favorite because they're always a challenge. I remember having to do Disney princesses, and that one was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect to have to research mermaids, but I did just for our listeners.
I'm a listener. I listen to our own podcast, so I guess this could be a listener issued challenge. But
Yes.
I want to remind everyone before we delve into the topic that our podcast is brought to you by our friends at Bottom Gun Coffee,
Bottom gun
Made-
coffee.
the world's finest coffee. You can go to bottomguncoffee.com, get yourself some. I enjoy Ahab's Revenge, the breakfast blend, the dark roast. They have a pecan if you're from the Northeast, or if you speak fluent hillbilly gibberish, you'd pronounce it pecan.
Bacon.
And yeah, tell them we sent you from the X Factor podcast when you go to bottomguncoffee.com. So, John,
Yes, Coach Brew.
there are a lot of, I guess you could say, power couples.
Yes,
You
absolutely.
see, in pop culture,
Yes.
like Kim Kardashian and Kanye West,
Right.
Ben Affleck and Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite, quote, power couples?
Well, I got to go with Harry and Meghan Markle. I mean, they're the power couple right there. You're combining British and American royalty. And what could be better than that?
How much time do you have? I could tell you a lot of things could be better than that. When I think of them, I think of a powerless
Yeah, it's more like a
member
powerless
of the
couple.
couple. I mean, he
Yeah.
is so whipped and cucked. That
Yes.
kid. They
Yeah,
moved to the United States, and he criticizes freedom of speech, and he doesn't understand why Americans value freedom of speech.
you're a prince. You could. Someone didn't
He's
tell him
even
that
a
he was
real
prince.
prince. It's not like he's the Prince of Bel Air. He's
That's a
certainly
real
not a
prince.
fresh prince.
Right, right. He's a prince, though. He could have had. Oh well, it is.
Yeah. Hey. So that's your favorite power couple, really?
No, I would say Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan. That's a power couple right there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Ronald the actor or Ronald the president?
Ronald the president.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I mean, someone had to look out for the astrological signs and things like that. So, and she took care of that for him.
Super. And always made sure he had plenty of jelly beans in his candy jar on his desk.
Correct. And hide his nuclear button when he was having his moments, his senior moments.
His is bigger than anybody else's, and his button works. Oh, that's a different president. Sorry.
That's a different president, but yes, same
They were
concept.
both making America great again, supposedly.
That's right.
Yeah, there are a lot of really impressive power couples that, well, let's just tell everyone this. The episode today is X Factor relationships,
Relationships, yes.
which isn't necessarily power couples, but those are just fun ones to look at.
Yeah.
So I will give you, I'll give everyone my sort of like my list of people who didn't quite make it,
Okay.
and then my runner-ups.
Okay.
So X Factor relationships. I went a ways back. I pulled from a ways back on this one, John.
All right.
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve. It's not Adam and Steve, right?
No, it's Adam and Eve. And no, Parker, I'm not talking about that adult novelty shop that sells the quote toys in that catalog, the Adam and Eve catalog that you subscribe to. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the original Adam and Eve.
Right.
And then in probably similar fashion, you had Pamela Anderson and Tommy Lee.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they were the original celebrity sex tape couple. Jr.
I was gonna say they're a lot like Adam and Eve. They didn't have any clothes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they did have Hep B, or was it Hep C or Hep B? He gave her hepatitis. I know that.
Oh, geez,
Probably,
no, I didn't know that.
probably among other things. Yeah, he gave her Hep B, I think. Yep.
Nice. Well, the gift that keeps on giving.
Yep.
Yep.
And speaking of the gift that keeps on giving, you had Rihanna and Chris Brown.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Charlie Sheen and a multitude of
I was
ladies.
gonna say which one.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's not exactly hashtag winning anymore, so he didn't make the grade. Ike and Tina Turner,
Yeah.
Kamala Harris and Willie Brown. No, I made a list. Okay.
Okay.
Michael Jackson and Macaulay Culkin.
Oh, we were wondering how we could get canceled.
Yeah.
To our listeners, we apologize in advance, but we are, yeah.
And this might be viewed as a little bit of a preemptive strike, me guessing what your X Factor relationship choice will be. When I think of power couples,
Yeah.
I think of this particular power couple, and I have a feeling this is the X Factor relationship you chose.
What's that?
You and Parker.
Ah, wow, that is a special relationship.
I mean, look at the kid's hat. That's special, all right.
That is a special hat.
Are those bananas on his Hawaiian shirt?
Or are you just happy to see us?
Well, but bump. So yeah, that was like second runner up, and then the runner up in the category, Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to go with Lei Wang.
Brady?
What's that?
Belichick and Brady?
No. I thought going to go to Robert Kraft and Lei Wang, which was the masseuse that he got in trouble with. But that's okay. No, I'm sorry.
You can't make that up. That her name was Lei Wang.
It is 100%. You can Google that, right, Parker?
I have another
the Chargers didn't stick, by the way, with Kraft.
They didn't.
No, it's almost like I guess he got off twice. So anyway, I chose Kraft and Belichick because they've been together forever. There is a sustained level of greatness there.
Yes.
And let's just choose to forget the year that was this past season without Tom Brady. But
yeah, that was pretty
at
ugly.
one point early in his tenure, Bill Belichick was 5-13.
Yep.
Everyone in the media was calling for his head, saying Kraft should fire him. He's getting the same guy that was in Cleveland. And he stuck with him. And my gosh, he's got to be glad he did, And they've had a very, very close relationship. And I would argue if it were any other owner, Belichick wouldn't still be employed. And if it were any other owner, Belichick wouldn't, the owner wouldn't have the level of success the two of them enjoy together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we talked about Robert Kraft, I think, in past episodes of how people talk about Tom Brady, but really the beginning of the Patriots dynasty started with Robert
Yep.
Kraft, and then bringing on Bill Belichick, and then bringing on Tom Brady, and so
Yep.
yeah.
But you know why they were a runner-up?
Because you found one that was better.
They're 2 decades together.
Yes.
I found one that is over 5 decades together and still going strong.
Hall and Oates.
No, it is not Hall and Oates.
Jerry Falwell Jr. and the Pool Boy.
Pool Party at Seymour's featuring Seymour Butts. What'd you say? What?
Do you not know that?
I have no idea what the kid's talking about, JR.
I don't know.
Give him permission to speak? I thought we had a mute button.
It was a little early in the show for that, so. But I was thinking, like, what about Simon and Garfunkel? They've been around 50 years, right?
They are no longer together.
Oh.
And this duo is currently.
But every band breaks up.
True.
No duos stay together.
No. This is the longest touring band / duo, really, in history.
Sonny and Cher.
In
Sonny
music.
and Cher.
History. No.
Captain and Tennille.
No.
The Beach Boys.
No.
Well, they're technically the oldest touring band, I thought.
No. So they've in this year, 2021 into 2022, they've got 52 dates on 2 different continents.
Oh, wow.
Yep. And I am talking about ZZ Top.
Oh, I like ZZ Top.
Yep. Billy Gibbons and Dusty Hill specifically. They've had some other guys in the band come and go, but they are the bearded duo. Fun fact, JR.
Fun fact, yes.
Their original drummer's last name was Beard.
Yep,
right.
Frank Beard.
Frank Beard, but he didn't have one.
Right. That's correct.
Yeah. So, there are a multitude of reasons why I think these guys are X Factor. I would have to say you start with the name. And fun fact, you think of ZZ Top, you think of Sharp Dressed Man, you think of the Eliminator album. She's got legs and knows how to use. You think of those songs. They really started out as a blues band out of Texas. And one of their favorite artists was B.B. King. They're trying to figure out what to name the band. And Billy Gibbons, who is, he is the beard that you will see on the right when you're looking at them if you're facing the stage. He's almost always on the right. Anyway, Billy Gibbons noticed that there were some very popular, successful blues acts that had the same 2 initials at the front of the band name or the artist name, and then a short last name. And I'll give you 2 examples. B.B. King being like the greatest one, and the second one was ZZ Hill. So they realized that B.B. King was the artist at the top of the charts. But they also really liked ZZ Hill. So they took ZZ Hill and the word top, and they named themselves ZZ Top. Not exactly the most original thing in the world, but it worked. And here we are 50 years later. The reason I think they're so X Factor, besides the fact that, so it's one thing if you're let's say Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick, and your offices are down the hall from one another and you work together. But, you go home to your respective homes and families at the end of the day, and then you see each other, the next work day. When you're in a band, you're constantly touring.
Yes.
and you're on the same bus or you're in a van together. You're taking turns driving the van in some cases, and you don't get away from one another.
No, not at all.
Better find a way to get along really well. It kind of reminds me of like an early startup. Two friends start a business, and they can't afford to have an office or have a kind of distribution center or whatever. So they rent a space. They put a couple cots in it. Yeah, I actually think this is how Andy Frisella and his business partner started First Form, the supplement company in Missouri. They got a space, put a couple cots in it, and they were sleeping there, packing orders, working, out of one room, around the clock. You better like each other, and you better find a way to get along and put your differences aside, because you can't avoid one another. And it's the same thing with the band. You're sleeping essentially in a steel tube going 80 miles an hour down the road, in a coffin for a bunk that's stacked on top of basically another coffin on top of another one, in a very condensed space with your whole band.
Mm,
Sharing a bathroom, like you're sharing a living room, you're sharing everything. And I think, speaks, and it's real testimony to the fact that they found a way to make something work for 5 decades.
that's nuts.
At a time when the divorce rate, in the last 5 decades has just grown exponentially. Something like 2 out of 3 couples end up divorced
Yeah.
within
Yeah.
a couple of years. And these guys, I mean, they're probably very much like an old married couple, have found a way to make it work. Their sound has changed a bit over the years, but it's a really cool story in that, like, their personas that they've created. They're a very different band 10 years in than when they started. They took a little bit of a break in between recording and touring. And when Dusty and Billy got back in studio, they both had some scruff. They unintentionally, and they didn't talk about it with one another, they just started to grow beards. And they looked at each other like, who's gonna shave it off first, kind of thing. Got a little bit of a doormat growing on your chin there, buddy. And they just decided to keep them. And that look grew, and it grew in popularity, and it looked like, you see those guys, there's no mistaking them in that act for anything else in the music industry. So they almost became caricatures of themselves. I don't know if you remember seeing the ZZ Top cartoon back in the day. There was a cartoon,
Oh yeah. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah.
and they did, I think, cartoon music video. But like, they became these different personas when they took the stage, and it was based around the beard, to the point where somebody offered them $1 million to shave it off. And this is obviously after they got a lot of traction and commercial success. And like, no way.
Yeah.
Like that would cost us more than $1 million. That would not be profitable for us to do that. And then shortly after that, Gillette offered them a sponsorship deal, like, please endorse our product. And again, like, to shave. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So they
Yeah.
walked away. I think it's a great business example of, like, $1 million might seem like a lot of money, but if it takes away from your brand and your persona and the image that's made you far more over the years, that's something you need to be willing to say no to and walk away from. I think they're really smart not to deviate from this, category of one, this sort of lane they created for themselves.
Yeah, well, I think there was a lot of rock bands that looked a lot alike, right? Back then, if you imagine that was in the 80s, you had a lot of hair bands, the Poisons of the world, and the Bon Jovi back then was, long hair, Motley Crue, that kind of thing. But they were unique, right? They had the long beards, the hats, the fuzzy guitars, right?
Yeah.
So
You know?
So fun fact, it was in 1986 and I was going to school in Worcester, Mass. And I got a call from a buddy and said, I got 2 tickets to ZZ Top. I can't go. Do you want to buy them? So I bought them, and me and my roommate went to go to the concert. When we looked at the seats, we realized we were front row center of ZZ Top 1986, the Eliminator tour. We got to watch that, like, between
Wow.
me and this camera, we were that
Yeah.
close to the stage. And that year they did 139 dates. They traveled all over the world with that tour. But one of the things I remember
That's
about
like the height of their popularity.
it was very, very big. 83 was the big album. Which one was the limit? Not the limit. Yeah, Eliminator was the album in 83. So this is 3 years after that huge success. And I remember, you remember in the music video, I think maybe it's Legs, where the guitars flip around, where they turn. Well, they had a setup. They had a rig on stage where they had the fuzzy guitars and they're playing. It was probably Legs. And they were on stands, black stands where you couldn't see, but they actually weren't attached to them. They were actually on stands. They were playing, and they both flipped them at the same time. And it was just like the music video.
Yeah.
And all, the whole crowd was like, what just happened? They just did that live. So
if that happened today, think about how many people would have missed that because they're staring at their phones.
Right. No, I was not staring at my phone then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they were really, they're one of those bands too that was aided by the launch of MTV.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you got to see really, the huge visual element, the beards, the guitars that kind of look like their beards, the furry guitars, that iconic, I don't even remember what muscle car it was with the suicide doors that the women were driving in the video. And then do you remember they came out with those gold ZZ Top logoed keychains? Like everybody had back then.
Yeah.
So there are all these different little, sort of brand signatures, for lack of a better term, that they really added these visual elements to what they did. They're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They won 3 MTV Music Awards. Billy Gibbons is one of the top 100 guitar players, greatest guitarist all time, according to Rolling Stone. Parker's raising his hand like he has something to say. This is going to be scary. Yes, Parker.
Not only were they inducted into the Rock Hall of Fame in 2004, but what I found really cool is they performed at the inauguration of President George W. Bush in 2001 and releasing the live album and DVD live from Texas in 2008.
Yeah, so W had to have been a ZZ Top fan growing up. Family roots in Texas. ZZ Top's from Texas, Dallas area, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so that's cool.
Play for the Presidents.
They're actually formed in Houston. My bad.
Houston. Okay.
Yep. But just it's incredible at what they've done and what they've accomplished. The 3 biggest albums were Eliminator, Afterburner, and Recycler. Like, you listen to just an album names sequentially. Those were all released together, one after the next. They're all on brand with that. The guitar sound is crazy. I'm trying to look up their.
Didn't they release a greatest hits from around the world? It was like 2016 they released it or something like that.
Yeah, hold that thought. They had 6 #1 singles. They've earned 4 gold, 3 platinum, and 2 multi-platinum albums. 1 diamond album.
Wow.
Which is like, what is that? Like, platinum is, gold's 500,000, platinum's 1 million, multi-platinum. Diamond's got to be 10 million or 100 million. I don't know. Can you look that up, Parker? What's a diamond album? It's got to be over 10 million, I would imagine. But I just think that it's fascinating how they've embedded themselves in all these other areas too. They played the Super Bowl, they played NASCAR events.
The diamond. the Diamond Awards honoring those artists whose sales of singles or albums reached 10 million copies, and it was introduced in 1999.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
almost as many copies of my latest book that have sold.
Almost.
But what's
Almost.
really interesting is that this Diamond album became much less common once the majority of retail sales became paid digital downloads and digital streaming.
Yeah,
And
so
that's when artists went broke.
exactly, and had to tour year round, year
Yeah.
after year, and never came off the road. But
But
it
what,
is,
what got me was that in '86 when they played, they did 136 dates that year.
yeah,
That's a lot of dates, and that's
yeah.
a lot of time, as you mentioned, spending time together in tight spaces. Um, you know, and the fact that most bands always break up after 5, 10 years, right? Especially when you're talking about an artistic endeavor, right? Where you're writing music and playing music, and you have different opinions about what it should
Oh,
sound like
yeah.
and what it should look
Creative
like.
differences,
Yeah,
sure.
and so it's kind of really amazing that these two stayed together for as long as they did, and it really it's a testimony to their relationship and their, and you're right. There's a great documentary that's out now, I think on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken,
Yeah,
about ZZ Top and about their story. And they even mentioned that there was times where they came off tour and they're like, we need a break from each other, and they would
yeah,
go away for like 6 to 8 months and just like do whatever they said, spend their money, have a good time, basically,
sure.
but get away from each other. And that says something too, especially if we have a lot of entrepreneurs who listen to the show, and you got a business partner, and you do need to spend some time away from that person, because when you're in the trenches all day long trying to make decisions for your business, growing your business, and then inevitably you're going to get conflict. And I think it's really important that partners separate each other from each other, and you have those hiatus, those times where you can get away from the business, and make sure that you can still come back and be able to work together. Because if you want longevity, you're going to need those periods of rest in between. I know as a submarine crew, we'd be gone for 3.5 months, 100 days away from we'd be 100 days in a metal tube, as you mentioned earlier,
Yeah,
together, right? And we needed that. Then we had 3 months off. We had over 3 months where we got away from each other because we needed to release that, whatever it was, like that frustration you'd have working with someone so closely. So I think that's also a statement about their longevity, is the fact that they knew that they had to separate if they wanted to stay together.
yeah. At one point, Billy Gibbons had mentioned that once maybe the best thing they did to maintain their relationship was once they started to really make money, they got separate buses they traveled in.
Yeah,
But
there you
those
go.
buses are like 1.5, $2 million. So like they really need, they were together for a long time before they could ever afford to do that.
Right.
But yeah, it's just really interesting.
I love their story. I love their music, and I'm so glad that I got a chance to be there in the front row in '86, and at the height of their
Bucket
success.
list stuff right there.
What's that?
It's bucket list type
It
stuff.
is a bucket list. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So there was I guess maybe a study or something. I'm looking this up. There was like a study that went over like the average like lifespan of like a band. Just take a guess at like the average lifespan of like a rock band.
8 months.
I say 5 years.
So they said anywhere from like 2 to 3 years out of, yeah, I think it was like 101 bands that were included in this like study, and they got like, they said that it was like 2 to 3 years or something like that was the average like span of when the band would start and when they would break up.
That's like a Hollywood marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. 2 to 3 years. That's about it.
It's kind of like
Yeah, everything has a shelf life, so it makes it really even more remarkable when things exceed that shelf life and don't go stale or sour.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I love it. That's a great story. I like ZZ Top. That's a great example of an X factor relationship that's lasted 5 decades.
So, did I steal your thunder and your X Factor relationships? You and Parker, the power couple.
Well, we haven't stood the test of time yet, so we'll see if that lasts. So, but it could be, you know. Oh, I'll get that.
Phone call.
Who is
Sorry.
it? It's probably one of our P1 listeners. Like, hurry up, get over. What's up? What's next? Trying to tell it to speed up.
What do you have next?
I have. So I was thinking about this X Factor relationships, and I was, I went through a lot. I mean, you think about like the top power couples, the top famous, what was I gonna say? Costello, not
Abbott
Albert,
and Costello?
Abbott and Costello. Jeez, my brain went numb right
Laurel and
then.
Hardy?
Yeah, Laurel and Hardy. I was thinking about all those Laverne and Shirley and all those kind of examples of where whenever there's an and, you have those couples, those people that influenced us, and there's a ton of them. But I went back to one that I have been faithful to, and someone that I really enjoy over the years. And I want to talk about, because really, I think in a way, they're one of the first almost podcast kind of formats, even before podcasting. And that is Click and Clack.
Frickin' frack?
Not Frick and Frack. Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers. Now, have you heard of Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers? Parker, have you ever heard of Click and Clack?
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah. So this is a show called Car Talk, and it's a show that was on NPR for 35 years, from 1977 to 2012. It was called Car Talk, and they did one episode every week. And it was the guys weren't really Click and Clack. They were actually, though, real brothers in real life. It was Tom and Ray Magliozzi, the two Italian brothers.
Where are they from?
They're from our fair city, Cambridge, Massachusetts, so near Boston, Mass. They have, if you haven't seen the show, they're two brothers that are both from Boston, have their very strong Boston accents. And people call in the show with their various car problems and relationship problems. And they get two Boston guys that try to solve their problems. And of course, there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of jokes. There's always questions about, well, my wife does this. Is she crazy? Is my husband does this? Is he crazy? And about their cars. And there's always, there's a raccoon that's living in a car. The stories are incredible, and it's a hilarious show. And the two guys, Tom and Ray, they laugh at each other's jokes with this heavy Boston laugh, and it's contagious. If you've never heard the show, you can still listen to it. It is actually on a podcast now, so they play the old episodes every week. They release a new episode, and it tracks the year that they're in. So they might be doing they might do 2001. And so you're listening to the May 15th show from 2001 on May 15th, 2021, which is really cool. So they're still on a podcast.
You hear that?
Guys,
you hear that? Can you hear that?
Yeah.
That's the sound of you migrating all of our listeners over to somebody else's podcast.
Well, it's only one episode a week, and I listen to it. It comes out on Saturday mornings, just like the original NPR show did. It's Car Talk, and yeah, you should listen to it. When I do my chores on Saturday and Sunday, I usually listen to Car Talk. It's one of my favorite all-time shows. But so it's kind of interesting. So these two guys, they kind of play off as doofus car mechanics, right? That they don't really know anything. In fact, they call themselves chumps. Sometimes they used to have an episode called Stump the Chumps, where they would bring back callers from previous shows to see if their solution actually fixed their car problems. So they always made fun of themselves. But the truth of the matter is that they both graduated from MIT. They were both really smart. In fact, Tom had his PhD as well. So they were very smart guys.
They're playing roles on air.
They were playing roles on air that they were a bunch of dumb mechanics trying to solve people's car problems and relationship problems. But so the show was called Car Talk. It was presented as a call-in show, and listeners would call in their questions about, motor vehicle maintenance and repair. But the thing is, with the way the format is that they had a phone number, and it was available 24/7. So you could call anytime during these years from 77 to 2012. You could call in, and and leave a message as to what your problem was. And they would get about 2,000 calls a week, and they would select only 4 or 5 to call in live to the show. And Tom and Ray had so the people that produced the show picked the 4 to 5 callers, and Tom and Ray didn't know who they were and didn't know what it was, but they always picked someone with a funny story, so they literally picked the top 4 or 5 out of 2,000 every week. And that's what made the show. It was just some of the funniest stories that would come in here, and them trying to solve the problem. And so that's what kind of made it fun. And sometimes when they were stumped and they didn't know how to, there'd be a car problem that they couldn't figure out, and they would say this. They'd attempt to answer it anyway, and the answer they claimed was unencumbered by the thought process. And that became sort of an unofficial motto to the show, which was they would make decisions or make claims unencumbered by the thought process. So they would make fun of themselves, like we're guessing at this point, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of funny. So those of you who are listening in, you're saying, I've never heard a car talk. I don't know who Click and Clack are. I have no idea who this Tom and Ray Magliozzi are, right? But have you seen the movie Cars? Parker, have you seen the movie Cars? Okay. So you got Lightning McQueen, right? The star, right?
Yeah.
Who was his sponsor? Can you remember?
I do
Stickers.
not.
It was Rusty's. You remember Rusty's at all?
Oh,
That was the name of the company that sponsored him. Well, the two cars in that show that were the two sponsors were actually Tom and Ray. They were played themselves in the cartoon in both Cars 1 and in Cars 3. They weren't in Cars 2. But in one of their most famous lines that they say at the end of every show, Ray warns the audience, "Don't drive like my brother." And then Tom says, "And don't drive like my brother." But they've used that line actually in the Cars movie. If you watch Cars 1, they warn Lightning McQueen not to drive like my brother and not to drive like my brother. So they played themselves essentially. They were Rusty and Dusty Rusties that were their characters' names in that particular show. But so it's kind of cool. Tom and Ray were actually graduated from MIT. Like I said, they didn't really want to go into the technical field, so they opened up a do-it-yourself garage. It's called Hackers Haven in the 1970s, early 1970s. And this is great for those entrepreneurs listening to the show. They sucked at being business owners. Okay, they were losing money at Hackers Haven, so they had the idea like we'll just set up a bunch of garages, right? And people can come in and rent the bay, and they can rent our tools, and they can fix their own car. And it sucked. They couldn't make any money. But the local radio station, the Boston's National Public Radio Station, met them, and they came on the show and started doing bits, and having these car repair things. And it turns out Boston loved them, right? They loved them, and they were invited to be permanent guests.
Tough market.
Well,
It's a tough market. So if you have an audience there, it's going to work a lot of places.
Oh, absolutely. And so in 77, they asked them to be permanent additions to their radio team, just answering, car questions. And then it boomed from there, and they became radio personalities. And then eventually they shut down Hackers Haven because it wasn't making any money. In the early 80s, they opened up a regular kind of auto repair. So they ran that the whole time. It's called Good News Garage. And they ran that, and they did the radio show. So the radio show they do on the weekends. And then during the week, they actually ran a real car repair dealership or car repair shop.
And that shop probably is a source of some pretty good show content too.
Well, it was. They would always tell stories of like, oh yeah, you remember that time that car came in, and like and so that was always an element of fun too.
Yep.
So I guess and again, this show ran for 35 years, which is amazing. And it really, the format is a lot like, it's almost a lot like this podcast, right? There's a lot of back and forth dialogue, there's humor involved. And they can't count the episode numbers correctly. Yeah, same thing. They can never remember that. Like, for example, every week Tom would do a puzzler, and Ray would never remember what last week's puzzler was. That was a kind of an ongoing humor. It used to have just 2 sections. They had 2 segments, the first and second segments. They added a third segment, and they always kept saying, then from that point on, the joke was, well, that'll be in the third half of the show. So that became a source of humor. So there was a lot of like inside humor and a lot of. So I was a P1 listener to Car
The
Talk. I still am
inside
a P1
humor
listener.
even rolled into the credits at the end of that show.
Oh my gosh, the credits are one of the funniest things. Yeah, absolutely.
So if you do nothing with the information John gave you about their podcast, fast forward to the end credits.
Yes.
Listen to that, and that'll actually make you. This sounds weird. It'll make you want to watch from the beginning. Just listening to the end credits.
Yeah, they said they would always, the say with the show was sponsored by our law firm Dewey, Cheatham and Howe was one of the, and they had all these little fake sponsors of the show, which kind of made it
bits on that show are great.
What's kind of
so
funny,
they ended up winning a Peabody Award in 1992, and sadly, Tom passed away in 2014. He was 77. They both retired in 2012, but you can still listen to the show. They still have it on NPR, on Sirius XM radio. They still play it every week, and they have their podcast. They still play every week. They're rerunning old episodes, and I still listen to it every week.
Think about how many shows have come and gone and don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Name the other show that is on the reruns are on XM.
Yeah.
And rebroadcast, I believe, also on a podcast. But I know probably for a fact it's on XM, the reruns. Go ahead.
I was thinking of Prairie Land Companion. That seems to be a popular show. I don't know. I don't listen to it. But... No,
I was thinking of Howard Stern.
Oh, I bet you're right. Yeah.
All of his reruns are on XM.
Yeah. And we talked about him in past episodes.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's arguably the largest, most X Factor broadcaster ever.
Yeah, absolutely.
For those two guys, Car Talk, in their own way, be in the same conversation with Howard Stern is pretty X Factor, JR. They have their reruns on satellite just like Stern. Yeah. Name another talk show that has that. It's can't.
Crazy. Yeah. So their former producer, Doug Berman, he said that Tom and Ray changed public broadcasting forever because the brothers showed that real people are far more interesting than canned radio announcers. They were the first to be sort of these goofy, real mechanics in real life, just, kind of having some fun at talking about car repairs and that sort of thing. And they said these guys are culturally right up there with Mark Twain and the Marx Brothers. They'll stand the test of time. People will be enjoying them years from now. They're that good. And I do agree with that. They did change things. They brought humor into, they combined two really different genres, humor and, auto repair. Who thought? But every one of us has a car. Every one of us has car problems. We also have relationship problems, and they just sort of, capitalized on, had a lot of fun with that. And they ended up, being around for a long time.
At the time they came on air, John, everyone owned vehicles that had far more problems far more frequently than today.
Yes.
So they just sort of hit that intersection of it was perfect timing for them to be talking about what they spoke about on air with, cars that, thing constantly had to be repaired. Even new cars, had their own little snafus. It's fascinating. Really,
the show doesn't work today, right? The show, most cars, you don't have these kind of problems, right? So the show really almost doesn't work today, but it is fun to listen to old episodes and to listen to what people were challenged with. Some of the funniest episodes, people trying to make the noises that their cars make. And they fixed, and of course, Ray and Tom would always go, say that again. And they'd make the noise. Wait, one more time. Just make the person do it again. And I think that was a lot of fun. So, but here's, a great example of it. So you're an entrepreneur, you're starting your business, you've got a vision for your business, and you find out that it's not really working that well, but it turns out you do something else, which is become a radio announcer, and that thing exploded. So they started out as, for opening up an auto shop that didn't really do very well, but they ended up becoming stars as radio announcers. And I think that says something about us as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, if you're just keep pressing, and you're not getting anywhere, you might have to make that pivot and make that change. And you never know what that'll look like going forward. So I think they're a great example of that. One of my favorite shows, Car Talk. I encourage people to listen to it and see, why I think there's such an X factor.
And I would tell you this: this is the one time that we will encourage you to be a P2 or a P3 listener. You should absolutely listen to Car Talk, but you should be a P2 or a P3 listener of Car Talk. You should be one listener of the X Factor podcast.
So, I agree with that.
And it's important, Otherwise, we got bills to pay here, and John won't be able to support his Diet Mountain Dew habit if we don't have P1s.
Especially on Sunday. They do drink a lot of Diet Mountain Dew on Sundays. So
you do the Dew?
I do the Dew.
That's good.
We need them as a sponsor.
Click and Clack, Car Talk, ZZ Top, who also in part became famous because of that car in their music video. It's all congruent, JR.
It's 100% congruent. I had no idea. We had no idea what happened. Like every week on this show, we never know what
pirate ship.
Yeah, it's a pirate ship.
The Car Talk, that podcast, or not the podcast, the show. What I found was kind of funny is like it was a complete accident. The whole thing was an accident. Yep. Like them going on the radio show, they never knew. Like going into that, they didn't think anything was going to come of it in 1977. But then all of a sudden, people were like so amazed by like these two guys that they're like, oh, we need them back.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's some of why it worked is like they had no desire to become, media personalities. They're just like, screw it. Let's just go on here and do our thing.
Yeah. And people loved it.
They didn't care,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It worked.
Yeah. Yep.
And that non sequitur by Parker is brought to you by our friends at Bottom Gun Coffee. It's a beautiful hat you have on there, Parker.
Yeah, no, it says...
I've been trying to figure out what it says. Summer? Hello, Summer.
Summer. Now, is that your mom's hat, your sister's hat, your girlfriend's hat? Please tell me that's not your hat.
It is not my hat.
Okay, good.
I stole it from Goodwill.
What? You stole from the Goodwill shop?
I'm kidding.
That is like, what do you do for an encore after you steal something from Goodwill? You go down the street and you mug a nun?
Yeah. No,
you stole from Goodwill.
It is my girlfriend's hat. I'm not sure where we got it though. I think it was maybe Target. I'm not sure.
Well, I like it, and I like the beach scene behind you. For those who can't see it, or you're in your car, you're listening on our podcast. If you watch our YouTube channel, you can see that he's on a tropical island somewhere.
It's my own island. I'm Prince Parker.
I'm just waiting to see like a volleyball with a face painted on it, like Tom Hanks in Castaway had Wilson.
There's an X Factor relationship. We could have done that one. Yeah, Tom Hanks and Wilson.
I still think Prince Harry. That's the best X Factor relationship ever.
Megan.
I don't know. It's kind of scary. That or Charlie Sheen and the three hookers he had living with him.
Whatever happened to that guy?
He's still just being Charlie Sheen, I think. I don't know.
Good for him.
Amazed he hasn't been canceled. Think about that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's it. What do we have coming up? Other
well, we had a couple of we had some really good suggestions on some shows. I'm really looking forward to hitting some of these. Let's see some of the latest ones. I got it right here, this list somewhere. Oh, we had X Factor Explorers. That sounds kind of interesting. Suggested X Factor military leaders. cartoons. That was a suggestion.
We did
we
X
covered
Factor
that one last
cartoons
episode.
last week. Yeah.
Yep. Scientists, X Factor scientists, inventors. Although we did inventions, I believe.
Yep.
But inventors, that's kind of a different spin on it.
Yep.
And then YouTubers, that one is a challenge now. I think that one came from, where did that come from?
Apollo.
That was Apollo. Yeah, Apollo gave us that. So
Shout out
X
James
Factor
Elliott.
YouTubers. I couldn't even tell you one YouTuber.
Oh,
I think that's why we need to do that one next.
Okay.
That'll
list
be
off tons.
that'll be a challenge and a stretch for the two of us.
It will be for me. I'm not a
And
YouTuber.
Parker is all about that universe. He'll just make us look silly.
Yeah.
Which would be
I can
nice.
see him lighting up. He's like, look, he goes, shut up about that NPR show stuff. Let's talk about YouTubers right now. Yeah, and Twitch
I think that's what we'll
streamers.
do next. Thank you, James Elliott. That'll be fun.
Yeah.
Very, very uncharted waters for the two oldsters on the show here.
Yes. Yeah. No, that'll be fun. I'll look forward to that. Yeah. So that's coming up. So again, we encourage you to reach out to us on our YouTube page, on our website page, or on our
TheXFactorPodcast.com.
Thank you. And on Twitter, give us some ideas for shows. We'd love to, and challenge us, especially with older guys, older guys on the show. Give us something that challenges us. Yeah.
Yeah.
We like doing things that challenge us.
We do. Do tough things,
Yeah.
as JR likes to say. Do tough things.
Comfort,
things or tough things?
Yeah, hard things. Comfort is a cage. Do hard things.
There we go.
Yep.
Well, you're looking good, Parker. And I think he's dodged the bullet of the hashtag cancel Parker movement taking him out.
I think so.
Snipers did not take him out.
No, he's turned over a new leaf. He's been fast with his fingers, bringing up stuff. Yeah, he's been.
I think
quiet.
it's sunglasses. Those are actually those Google glasses.
Oh, that's
I
it.
just think he got the tinted ones.
Nice.
That's why he's putting the headset and the glasses together. I think that's his big life hack for this show. But hey, if it works, I'm in favor of it. So let's keep rolling with that, folks. If you have a suggestion, like John said, message us and make sure you tickle our buttons. Jiggle the subscription button and the notification bell so you get notified when we drop a new episode. And absolutely subscribe on whatever platform you're on. You want to leave a comment. We check the comments. You want to leave a comment about an episode? Do that in YouTube too, if that's easier for you. We're all about your ease and convenience. You can do hard things and challenge yourself in other areas. We want to make it nice and easy and convenient for you.
Right. Yeah.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Well, I don't know about you folks, but I'm going to sign off and go brew myself some Bottom Gun coffee, which I will drink out of my Bottom Gun coffee mug. And I will be sitting poolside in my Bottom Gun coffee t-shirt while drinking my Bottom Gun coffee.
That's the only way to live.
Mm-hmm. I might even shoot a bottom gun in my pool.
Oh, I like that.
Torpedo.
A torpedo. Yeah.
That's not code for pooping in my own pool. On that note, we'll catch you in the next episode of the X Factor podcast.
Take care. Be different. Be invisible. Take care.
Parker, say something intelligent. Philosophical. Something philosophical.
Deep.
Like deep life advice or wisdom. How about this? Okay, let me give you a good writing prompt.
Or be invisible.
Here, I'm going to give you, it's almost like a writing prompt. I'm going to give you a prompt here, okay?
All right.
Let's pretend you are recording a message to your younger self.
Ah,
And you can only say one thing that's a piece of advice for your younger self. What would it be?
Stay consistent.
Stay consistent, folks. You heard it here first from the DFE. If you're going to delete one episode, delete them all, folks.